Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am General Candotti. I'm the Deputy of Operations of the Italian Air Fleet, and I'm here in representation of the Italian Chief of the Air Force, General Rosso, Alberto, that had to be here speaking to you today up to 4 or 5 days ago, but unfortunately in this last couple of weeks we have the Italian Air Force, or actually the Italian defense major yearly exercise running in Sardinia, and this morning our Minister of Defense decided to visit. So we left for Sardinia this morning, and that's the reason why I'm standing here. I was in my assignments in the Air Force, I was in charge of operational requirements for the Italian defense, and in the previous assignment I was in charge of operational requirements for the Italian Air Force. And I had with me in my department, in my division, our space and Hypersonic office. And in that remit I had the opportunity to meet many of you. Professor Carino is an old acquaintance, and I was the chief of the Italian Astronauts Corps, which they are still in exercise. And I must say I feel a little bit uneasy being a pilot. I'm not an astronaut, and I was a humble student of this institution. I came here in 1980. I even sustained some examination in this room. Actually, I had my history exam in this room, a total disaster. But at the end, I learned something eventually. And I say I'm a little bit uneasy because when my astronauts and my engineers were bringing me some proposals for financing, I was sending all the work back, writing, redraft in a language understandable to pilots. And because we have a different interface, so hopefully I'll be able to transmit to you what are the vision of the Italian Air Force today concerning the hypersonic. We are here all together because we have a common passion, we have an interest, and the passion and the interest in these subjects stems from far back. In Italy, many of those passions wear the blue uniform. In other parts of the world, they did not, because in Italy, the Air Force was created much earlier than somewhere else. So while the first studies of hypersonic and space in other nationalities were in the hands of other institutions, in Italy it started from the beginning in the Italian Air Force. And one of the most known and important experts of hypersonic in Italy was a lieutenant engineer in the Italian Air Force, Antonio Ferri. He was the man that was creating the first ultrasonic wind tunnel in Italy. He did the first supersonic fluid studies. And at the end, he was one of the first recognized experts in the world. And that caused the fact that at the end of World War II, the Organization for Strategic Services in the United States of America invited him to the United States, where he carried on many of the studies that at the end brought up the possibility to build a space shuttle. And he was, if I remember it correctly, at the end a professor of hypersonic and astronautics in the University of New York. And we had many other experts in this group of young Italian Air Force lieutenants. They were called the Guidoniani because they were working in Guidonia. We had a young lieutenant, Mr. Broglio, that Professor Carino before mentioned as being the leader of the initiative that brought the third world satellite in orbit. And Professor Broglio, at that time Major General of the Italian Air Force, was supported by roughly 100 Italian Air Force missileers that were originated from the Jupiter program that was ended in Italy in 1962 after the crisis of the Cuban missiles. And it was fun because, as many things that happened in Italy, besides soccer and Ferrari, it was not much publicized. So at that time, when the third satellite was put in orbit, in Europe it was not very well known. So a few days after the Italians sent a spacecraft basically in orbit, the President of France, Charles de Gaulle, called the foreign minister of Italy, at that time was Amintore Fanfani, and proposed him a cooperation to build a European satellite to be the third one in space. And Minister Fanfani told de Gaulle, Mr. President, I'm afraid that my Air Force already did that a few days ago. And de Gaulle did not know about that. And some rumors said that a few days after, the Minister of Scientific Research in France was demoted, but the rumor has never been verified. So, as the Italian Air Force, today we continue in that vein, and we're very happy that here in this room a good deal of expertise gathered together to discuss subjects that we mastered much better in the past. I think Europe has lost a little bit of momentum because probably of the scarcity of resources, as General Cornacchia mentioned, but surely the intellectual part is lively. Considering the hypersonic, we as the Air Force, we divide, first of all, the space in two parts. Besides the atmospheric flights that we all know, it's our main business, going on top of it, we see two layers. And I want to clarify that because it's not immediately understandable to everybody. Normally, we divide everything is around the Earth in two parts, air and space. We don't. We have air, aerospace, and space. What is for us aerospace? For us, aerospace is an area where you still move a craft with mechanical principles, where you still have some sort of aerodynamical interaction. While space, you move in different ways. And in this band, which is not very well known, normally missiles go through it, and they don't have many interaction with what we call the aerospace band. But the hypersonic vehicles, most probably that we will have in the future, will be operating in this particular band. They already do. There's already prototypes doing that. even the space shuttle, when it goes from space to land, goes through the aerospace band and, unfortunately, experienced some problems in the past that led to accidents. So, at the moment, although we have a small astronauts corps, we participate in many of the space activities. The contest on which the Italian Air Force is focusing its operational capability is still pivoting around flying aircrafts. And we extend our technical expertise to include all aspects of it, as General Cornacchia said. So we try to produce operators or pilots, we try to produce engineers, we try to produce aerospace physiologists that know what happened there, and we form also lawyers, because there's a full regulatory world that needs to be exploited. We signed 4 years ago already an agreement with the American Federal Aviation Administration to regulate what we call the suborbital flights. Those flights that will have to depart as a normal plane, accelerate through the aerospace band, I was mentioning before, and land again as a normal plane. That means that you need a spaceport to take off, some piece of space to move, and a spaceport to land. And all that needs to be somehow regulated. The civil aviation today does not have rules about that. When a spacecraft is launched today, they basically shut down a part of sky to get the spacecraft up in orbit, and then they reopen again. That is not feasible anymore. With the volumes of air traffic that you have today, you need to find some sort of different modality to do that. And we try to build up all the experts in these different domains. Today we have subsonic, transonic. We flew many of those airplanes in our Air Force. Supersonic, we still have them. Tomorrow, as my friend Cornacchia said, we expect to have hypersonic vehicles. Actually, we already have them. There's no news. They were flying in the 60s. The X-15 was an hypersonic plane, and he was flying. He had almost 200 flights, so technology is there. We think that hypersonic will be the base of future transportation. It would completely redesign the way we travel from one continent to the other. The suborbital flights that could start between the US and Italy, as a matter of fact, I think tomorrow, or today or tomorrow, in Taranto, they have a meeting to promote the certification of the airfield in Grottaglie as a possible Italian spaceport. A project which is rather innovative, but is not new because it's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years or so. So probably the first European spaceport will be in Italy, in Taranto, if everything goes well. So if we can set especially the regulatory framework. These vehicles promise to connect Italy with the US in less than an hour, and to fly from Europe to Australia in 4 hours. Today it takes more than 24 hours to fly from Italy to Australia. And we'll get there, I'm sure. So the word hypersonic for us, it's bringing many new opportunities, from operations to technology to research, and the potential, the growth potential is much bigger. It will have impacts on the global economy. If you take any newspaper today, you can read on the newspaper the word space economy. And the space economy is there. In Italy, it's worth more than 600 million euros per year. And our industry in the field is a leader in some specific domains. So it's not fantasy. It's not General Candotti in the morning that woke up, got a bad coffee and started to have this strange fantascientific or parascientific ideas. In the world, the space economy is worth billions of dollars, and it will be the future. And thanks God, Italy somehow is connected to it. The main problem today is accessing the space for many reasons: technological, regulatory, political. There's many treaties that prevent certain activities in the space. So why today? And we started in the 60s, so it's 40 years, almost 50 years from the first experimental testings. Why are we still where we are today? Because probably there's some niche of potential that needs to be better exploited. And one of them is hypersonic flight. The hypersonic aircraft will have to fly high altitude. It always had to do that for drag purposes. And probably it could lead to a new way to access the space. We should not forget that at the beginning of the space enterprises, the altitudes that were reached with the first spacecrafts were not much different than the altitudes that were reached with the first hypersonic plane. Mr. Shepard, that went up with the Mercury program, reached almost the same altitude that Joseph Walker reached with the X-15. So it was already there 50 years ago. But then somehow the hypersonic part was let on a different pace, and they pursued only the space part. So for 60 years, our industries have concentrated on developing rockets. By the way, since we are in an educational institute here, how many people in this is your small examination for the day, and at the end you'll have a grade, and that depending on the grade you'll pass or not this seminar. How many people does know here? I need to put the glasses on, otherwise I don't see your faces, because the eagle sight has left a long time ago. And how many people does in this room know that the word rocket has an Italian origin? Raise your hand. Nobody. The word rocket is born in 1380, so almost 640 years ago. in Italy. And it originates from the war from the Republic of Venice and the Republic of Genoa. And in order to destroy one tower where the Genova faction, Mr. Pietro Doria, was observing the Venetian fleet approaching, in order to take that tower out, they used the Venetians. Admiral Vittor Pisani used a secret weapon. He got a German monk, you always have a German monk somewhere, and he had him modifying some fireworks, and he built the first rocket in the history used for military purposes. They pointed it to the tower, stayed out of the cannon fire, and they blew up the tower. And this strange secret weapon, some of the gentlemen that built it, it was a Venetian man, he said, it looks like La Rocchetta. La Rocchetta is the device that they use to spin the wool, il fuso. And of course, the news went around Europe, and everybody was wondering what this secret weapon name was. And La Rocchetta became Roquette in France, Racchetta in Germany, Racchetta in Russia, and we in Italy, to confuse the enemy, we called it Razzo. So you all failed, and you have to come back to the seminar because you did not know that rocket originated almost 700 years ago in Italy. Okay, so taking on hypersonic, the hypersonic vehicle that we will see in the future, there's also some renderings, but with the renderings, we never know. Professor Carino had many prototypes in his previous assignments, and from there, going into a real operational craft, it's very difficult. So, for us, the hypersonic aircraft, as I said, will need to take off horizontally, land horizontally, and possibly be reusable. We had crafts like the space shuttle that is refurbishable. So you use it once, you work on it 4 or 5 years, and you use it the second time. That is not the idea we want for the hypersonic flight. The propulsion is the main challenge. It is the challenge that did not allow today craft as such. But there's some news. A month ago, in April, the reaction engine company, I think it's a British company, declared that they built a system that will be able to handle the high temperatures developed in an engine during hypersonic flight after 4 years research, 100 million pounds spent. So the future is there, and one company, we can name it Boeing, while there are many other subjects in the world that are trying to bring back supersonic liners into flight, Boeing is shooting for the hypersonic craft. If they succeed or not, we'll see. Hopefully, some of the ideas leading to the future spacecraft and possibly to develop the idea that we have of the hypersonic craft in the future would stem from this audience. I look at the younger, you know, I'm to the end of my career. In 5 years I'll be gardening, and you have the future in front of you. Mr. Antonio Ferri, Mr. Broglio, many others that I don't mention here, they were at the same age that you have and with the same rank that you have. And they made the history of space and hypersonic. So there's lots of potential in this room. I therefore look forward to hear the results in this symposium. I trust the Academy and the Italian Air Force to do the most, as we always did, in this specific domain. And Mr. Broglio, who built the first space center in Italy, although it was in Malindi, named it from a saint. You know, we always need a saint in Italy to help the good fate, the fortune. He named his space center Santa Rita, the saint of impossible things. So you can, young people there, you can launch a Santa Rita project, and hopefully we'll see the hypersonic craft soon fly.